Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. A controversial push to make Chicago's downtown curfew for teens even earlier. How updating identifying documents could become easier for transgender people.
Without a FOID, you can't legally buy or even use a gun in Illinois, with limited exceptions.
And in our latest WTTW News Explains series, Amanda Vinicky looks at Illinois' gun laws and where the firearms recovered here come from. And now to some of today's top stories. A record number of people seeking abortion care are coming to the state of Illinois for it. Planned Parenthood of Illinois says it's seen a 47% overall increase in abortion care patients in the 2 years since the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision that allowed individual states to ban or restrict abortion access. The agency also says an unprecedented number of out-of-state patients make up nearly a quarter of overall abortion patients, compared to pre-Dobbs when it was just 3 to 5%. The largest volume of those patients are coming from Indiana and Wisconsin, but the newly opened Carbondale Health Center experienced the greatest increase, with patients coming from Tennessee and Kentucky. A group of Black and Latino drivers who are suing the city of Chicago say they are opposed to moving the oversight of traffic stops to the consent decree. Attorneys for the ACLU of Illinois, who represents the plaintiffs in that lawsuit, are asking federal Chief Judge Rebecca Pallmeyer to intervene. The group says the court order governing police department reform has moved at, quote, a snail's pace due to CPD's recalcitrance. And because the plaintiffs are already suing the city, alleging that its traffic stops disproportionately impact Black and Latino drivers, they fear that reforming the department's traffic stop program will only take longer. A public hearing on this issue is set for tomorrow. Construction crews working on the Obama Presidential Center are reaching a new milestone. The tallest building on the more than 19-acre campus reached its full height today of 225 feet, and former President Barack Obama was on hand for the announcement. The former president shook hands with construction workers and signed a beam that will be used in the ongoing construction of the center, located in Jackson Park. The center had expected to open in October 25, but that date has been pushed back to spring 2026. If you're heading downtown over the next few weeks, you may want to take public transit, as traffic is about to get a bit worse to make way for NASCAR. Starting today, crews began street closures to set up for the race course, with the closure of Ida B. Wells Drive from Michigan Avenue to Columbus Drive, and with limited parking restrictions along southbound Columbus Drive between Jackson and Balboa. More closures will come between now and July 5th, the day before racing begins, when closures will look more like this. CDOT says set up and tear down for the race will take just 19 days this year compared to 25 last year. And please check out our website for a full list of road closures. 4 Chicago chefs or restaurants are up for one of the biggest awards in the food industry tonight, as the 33rd annual James Beard Awards kicked off at the Lyric Opera of Chicago just a few minutes ago. The awards are among the most prestigious in the industry. Over the years, Chicago restaurateurs like Rick Bayless, Eric Williams, and Beverly Kim and Johnny Clark have won the coveted medallion. This past weekend, the James Beard Foundation also gave out media awards for journalism, cookbooks, and podcasts. Up next, a new proposal to restrict young people's access to downtown. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
There's a new push to change Chicago's curfew for unaccompanied minors downtown to 8 p.m. That's 2 hours earlier than the 10 p.m. citywide teen curfew. The controversial proposal comes after a violent attack in Streeterville that police say was perpetrated by 2 teens. Joining us now is James Wales, president of South Loop Neighbors. We also invited Alderman Brian Hopkins, who is proposing the earlier curfew, and Alderman Brendan Riley, who reportedly supports the plan, but both have declined. We also reached out to the Chicago Loop Alliance and a number of other downtown neighborhood associations, but they declined as well. James Wales, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So first, remind us, if you would, why a teen curfew was created for Chicago in the first place.
Well, I would suggest you ask the legislators that. I think that...
or their intention.
I think that, obviously there's I think Superintendent Snelling said it right on, that kids shouldn't be out at all hours of the night. And that's an accurate statement. And, those in opposition to the enhanced curfew are not going against that statement. But my feeling and the feeling of others, I also serve, I'm Vice President of the Grant Park Advisory Council, and we have already taken a position on this latest attempt to have an enhanced curfew is already part of a playbook that's already been put into place. For instance, Maggie Daly Park, no kids under the age of 18 are allowed in there after 6 p.m. On Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we are adamantly against that because the park is made for kids, specifically Maggie Daly Park, and that particular rule makes no sense. We've questioned it, and now with this new attempt to enhance the curfew to 8 o'clock throughout the Central Business District, we think is foolhardy. We have the last census data showed that there's over 500,000 kids who live in the city of Chicago under the age of 18. And what we're doing is penalizing 500,000 kids for the actions of 300 to 400 kids.
It seems like 8 p.m. is also a bit early
for
teenagers.
And I think that the attempt to implement some type of action to stop these horrendous incidents is understandable. But studies have indicated curfews have no impact on crime, none. And there have been a number of studies that have borne that out. In fact, I think Washington, D.C. enacted a enhanced curfew, and they saw an increase in crime during the curfew hours.
Some are concerned that this, by creating this kind of a curfew, right, gives police officers another opportunity to basically create a situation where now you've got teens who are, involved with the criminal justice system, involved with the law, and maybe it's just a matter of a ticket or a fine and off you go. But still, this is the kind of thing that by creating a law, there's an opportunity for a new law to be broken.
That is correct, and that is a possibility. But I think that hits on another target. The police department is 2,000 officers short, and anyone who thinks that they're going to have time to be enforcing curfew laws when they cannot even respond to crimes in progress, I think is being foolhardy.
That said, obviously, I'm sure there are some concerns by businesses and business owners and residents in the Loop area about crime coming to their community. And we saw it last summer as well with the so-called teen takeovers and large, sort of flash mobs of teens showing up. How can those situations that kind of turn violent, how can that be avoided? Well,
I think what you have to do is, number one, there's a couple answers to that. I think one, you have to look at the reason for the kids congregating downtown, coming down and congregating. I think the second thing that has to be looked at, instead of holding all the kids who live in the city of Chicago responsible for the actions of a few, we need to start holding those people accountable who are breaking the law. And there's laws already on the books. When you had these large gatherings, that's disorderly conduct. When you have them starting to impede traffic, starting to break windows, there's a number of crimes that are already on the books that prevent that. I think the second thing is Chicago has a parental responsibility ordinance, and what they perhaps need to do is look at perhaps utilizing that ordinance for the offenders on these incidents, these terrible incidents.
How prevalent is violence perpetrated by teens?
Again, I think that what people see is what they read in the newspapers and see on the TV. And so the perception is it's quite large. I think that probably is not borne out by the facts. I think kids certainly create situations where they become offenders in violent crime, but that goes to people of all ages.
You mentioned, what research tells us about the effectiveness of curfews on public safety. And the city of Chicago currently already has a 10 p.m. curfew that was instated a couple of years ago. Any thoughts or even anecdotally on the effectiveness of that 10 p.m. curfew?
Well, in my previous life, I taught criminal justice at the college level. And I would utilize curfew as an example of how ineffective some laws are. And curfew, so oftentimes people think, there's a curfew law and the kids are going to stay at home. And the reality of it is, when you're a kid and you sneak out at night at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you see a squad car drive by, does that say, oh, I'm going to go home because I know there's a curfew? No, you wait until the squad car's gone, and then you go out and do what you're going to do. So I think that curfew laws are a guide, but I think that we should not expect that that's going to be a deterrence to crime.
Then there's the concern that curfews disproportionately target black and brown children, teens. How do you respond to that?
I think that you look at the facts, and I think that the situations that have arisen in the past, I think that there is an indicator that, in fact, people of color are targeted more than perhaps people not of color.
Should there be exceptions to a curfew like this? For example, if a young person has a job that they are leaving?
There already are exceptions to this current curfew, both state and local. If you're coming from an event, an organized event, if you're coming from employment, etc. There are exceptions.
I mean, do you think something like this could be enforced?
No, I absolutely think that. Anyone who thinks that the Chicago Police Department has enough time on their hands to be going and carding kids who they think may be under the age of 18 for being in violation of the curfew ordinance, it's not going to happen.
And what's next? Are you in communication with aldermen about this proposed curfew?
We have, again, I think that the position that I know others have taken, as well as the position I've stated, is look at holding parents responsible. Look at the parental responsibility ordinance. That was the purpose for putting that on to begin with. Ultimately, a parent is responsible for their child to make sure that they're behaving appropriately within society's norms. And I think that in today's day and age, there's a lot of parents who work and they may not know. So I think that you have to have some latitude. So the first time the child is caught violating the teen gathering, where they're causing problems, you let the parent know, hey, listen, we caught your child engaging in behavior that was inappropriate. You got to make sure that he doesn't. And the second time, then they get cited. The parent gets cited.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. More to come on this, I'm sure, as aldermen try and push this through if they can. James Wales, South Loop Neighbors, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we explain Illinois' gun laws and the limits on how effective they are. Stay with us.
Chicago Tonight's coverage of public safety is supported by the Su Ling Jin Charitable Foundation Initiative for Reducing Violence in Chicago.
There's no disputing that gun violence is a problem in Chicago, despite laws intended to help. But are they effective? Amanda Vinicky looks for an answer in the latest edition of our series, WTTW News Explains.
Chicago has a reputation as the city of big shoulders, for rough and tumble politics, and for having a lot of crime, despite strict gun laws. But what are those laws? Most major gun restrictions come from the state, not the city itself. To purchase and own a gun in Illinois, you must have a firearm owner's identification, or FOID card. To qualify for a FOID card, you have to be at least 21 and have never been convicted of a felony. That and other disqualifying crimes would come up in the required background check. Without a FOID, you can't legally buy or even use a gun in Illinois, with limited exceptions. To carry a gun in public, that requires a second official credential, a concealed carry license, which requires completing a training course. Concealed carry licenses allow someone to carry a loaded gun in permitted places. Even someone with a CCL can't bring a firearm into a school, government building, CTA train, hospital, bar, or anywhere else where the owner has said no. Key in on concealed. No flashy holsters. In Illinois, that gun has to be hidden. firearm dealers, as in those who sell guns, have to be certified by the state too. Illinois requires 72 hours between when someone applies to buy a gun and when the dealer can deliver it. The state bans a bunch of guns outright as well, specifically those classified by Illinois as assault weapons. So, how do Illinois' so-called strict gun laws stack up? The Giffords Law Center gives Illinois an A- for having some of the nation's strictest gun laws. As for our neighbors, Wisconsin gets a C and Indiana a D-. Iowa, Missouri, and Kentucky all score Fs. Now, if gun rights groups did the grading, Illinois would probably get an F. The state is seen as one of the least friendly when it comes to gun ownership. Either way, gun laws in neighboring states impact Illinois. It's not like there are border checkpoints. The U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms reports that in 2022, of the nearly 20,000 firearms recovered and traced in Illinois, less than 40% were actually purchased in-state. The most recent data for Chicago is from 2019, and only about a third of the recovered and traced firearms were purchased in Illinois. So, while Chicago is the city of big shoulders and rough-and-tumble politics, the correlation between Chicago gun violence and gun laws, that is a little more complicated.
And you can see the rest of our Emmy-winning WTTW News Explains series on our website at WTTW.com/explains. Up next, how Illinois lawmakers want to remove a barrier for transgender residents. Stay with us. Transgender residents in Illinois may soon have a path to change their birth certificates that were issued in another state. That's if Governor J.B. Pritzker signs the bill passed by state lawmakers. The bill allows Illinois residents to get a judicial order to alter their name and sex on their birth certificate and other documentation issued in another state. Here to talk more about the impact this could have are Mike Ziri, the Director of Public Policy for Equality Illinois, and Avi Rudnick, Director of Legal Services at the Transformative Justice Law Project of Illinois. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Mike Ziri, starting with you, please. Last year, Illinois updated this process, making it easier for transgender people who were born in Illinois. They would no longer need that certification from a health professional before changing their gender or sex on that documentation. Who does this new piece of legislation impact?
Yeah, this, first of all, thanks for having me. This new piece of legislation, House Bill 5507, impacts Illinois residents who were born in another state or another country. And unlike Illinois, thankfully, other states and some countries require a court order to correct the gender marker on a birth certificate. So this legislation will really impact those folks who have moved to Illinois maybe decades ago. Maybe they are new residents of the state fleeing the cruelties of their home states right now, the anti-LGBTQ laws we're seeing. And so this will really be another tool and a way for Illinois to move forward in protecting LGBTQ plus folks who come to Illinois and live here.
And to be clear on the steps for that process, they just sort of have to basically sign documentation attesting to this change.
No, that's for residents. For residents who were born here under the law you talked about last year, under the legislation that the Transformative Justice Law Project in Equality Illinois advocated for this session, that's headed the governor's desk. What it does is it's very simple. It says that an Illinois resident can ask an Illinois judge for documentation that individual can then take or send to their home state to meet that standard of a court order. So it's just a very simple process. It just clarifies the law to provide a process in statute that isn't clarified now for what residents can do and what judges can do. So it provides clarity to judges, and it will be a powerful tool to help those folks who weren't born here.
Avi Rudnick, why is this necessary? Why is this needed?
Thank you for having me as well. This is needed because in the years I've been practicing assisting people with name and gender marker changes for about 13 years. And what I've seen repeatedly is judges feeling like they don't have the authority to sign an order telling another state what to do. And so this law is simply meeting what the other state is asking for, which is a court of competent jurisdiction to write an order saying that a person's gender has changed. So while we don't believe in that process, we do know that it's a barrier to individuals being able to change their gender markers on their birth certificates. And so this law will let judges know you can do this. You can sign an order based on a finding of fact that says that a person's gender has changed. And every state has different requirements. So the judges would look at what the petitioner is asking for, and then simply writing the order to meet the requirement of that state. And then it's up to that state about whether they want to accept it or not. But Illinois will no longer be a barrier to somebody taking that next step.
Mike, do you anticipate that, once they get to some of those other states with the court order from Illinois, that, like Avi said, it is up to that state whether or not they accept it or not? Do we anticipate that for some folks, depending on the state, that might still be a challenge?
Very well could be. And I want to put this bill in a national context, because we talk about Illinois moving forward. But we've seen more than 400 anti-LGBTQ plus bills introduced in state capitals across the country this year. And many of those introduced in states surrounding Illinois. So the fact that we are putting forth another piece of legislation to support and affirm trans folks in Illinois is really important. Now, we can't control what other states do. But to Avi's point, we can remove the barriers here in Illinois. And I know that that is something that the governor and the legislature have consistently done over the last several years and decades to remove barriers when it comes to accessing rights to reproductive health care, LGBTQ plus rights, et cetera. And this is just another example of the legislature and the governor and the state of Illinois moving forward in that way. So I'm really proud that the legislature took this step.
Avi, Illinois is, though, surrounded by states that are placing more restrictions on transgender people. Is there sort of a sense of urgency for those folks who are going through this process?
Absolutely. I talk with petitioners every day who feel a real sense of urgency because they see what's happening in states across the country. We saw the law get harsher in Wisconsin. We saw Tennessee enact laws where, as a trans person, you can't change your birth certificate. And so and we see what's happening in Ohio. There's, potential for the laws to get stricter in Ohio. So people who are born in a lot of these states, and we're surrounded by them, Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Ohio, South Dakota, that all require these court orders. People are really fearful that they'll enact laws like exist in Tennessee and that they won't be able to get their birth certificates changed at all, which poses a real significant safety issue for people if they have to show their birth certificate and it effectively outs them, which we know outing somebody there's a huge risk of violence associated with that.
And you just touched on it, but I was going to ask, why is it so important that someone, that their gender and their documents match their gender identity?
Yes, exactly. It's, if you have to go into a DMV and show your birth certificate to get a new driver's license, and let's say you're from a smaller area, that's going to disclose your gender identity to potentially your whole community, because all it takes is for somebody to tell somebody else. We deal with transphobic, situations here in Illinois going to the DMV at times. So we know that it exists here. It certainly exists in other states as well. And we just want to make sure that Illinois is not a barrier to keeping people more safe.
Mike, this bill passed in both the House and the Senate. What work happens from here to ensure that it gets to of course it will go to the governor's desk, but to ensure that he signs it? Yeah,
well, we've, procedurally, our organizations have put in the requests, which you always do. You put in the request to the governor, and we are very hopeful the governor will sign it. He has prioritized making Illinois a true bastion of safety and support and affirmation for the LGBTQ plus community. That has been his record even before he became governor, and we've appreciated the deep partnership that all of our organizations have had with the governor. So we're hopeful the governor will sign the bill when it does, hit his desk, and then we can think about what comes next as well. Our organizations have a lot of ideas on that as well, because the work of justice is never done. We have to keep moving forward.
And we all know that his sister, Colonel Jennifer Pritzker, is also the world world's first trans billionaire. And so it is something that is likely personal for him as well. We'll have to leave it there. Mike Zeri and Avi Rudnick, thanks to you both for joining us. And that's our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. We talk one-on-one with the founder of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And enjoy the Chicago River while learning about efforts to take care of it on the Shedd Aquarium's kayak conservation tours. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm, and proud sponsor of programming that offers advice and strategies to enhance the physical and mental well-being of fellow legal practitioners in Illinois.